The rain was hitting the conference room windows when Catherine Ross set down my promotion application without even opening it completely. 7 years of 60-hour weeks, missed dinners with my son, and countless weekends at the office, all reduced to a stack of papers she barely glanced at. "Calvin, I appreciate your dedication," Catherine said, adjusting her reading glasses. "But after reviewing your application, I don't think you're quite ready for senior management. Your methods are a bit traditional. Perhaps we should revisit this in another year or two." Traditional. The word hung in the air like a slap. I'm Calvin Pierce, 48 years old, and I'd just been told that 25 years of industry experience wasn't enough. You know that feeling when someone sucker punches you but you can't show it? That's where I was sitting. I kept my expression neutral, the same poker face I'd perfected in corporate meetings over the years. "I understand." "Thank you for the feedback," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Good, I'm glad we're aligned," Catherine replied, already checking her phone like my career setback was just another item to check off her list. "The Patterson Industries proposal needs your attention today. They're requesting additional cost breakdowns before signing." I gathered my materials while Catherine started typing emails, my 7 years of dedication already forgotten. Walking past the corner office that should have been mine, the one with the view and the nameplate I'd earned, something clicked inside me. Let me back up and tell you how I got to this point. When I joined Phoenix Dynamics 7 years ago, I was 41 and coming off a messy divorce. My ex-wife Rebecca and I were splitting custody of our son Nicholas, who was 7 at the time. I needed stability, good benefits, and a chance to rebuild. What I walked into was a complete disaster. The operations department was falling apart. The previous manager, some hotshot named Rodriguez, had quit after a blowout with corporate. He'd taken all the institutional knowledge with him. No procedures, no documentation, passwords to critical systems lost. Clients were threatening to walk, and nobody knew how to fix it. My first day, I found 3 different emergency situations that should have been routine fixes. The Patterson account was ready to bolt because nobody could figure out their custom billing requirements. Our main supplier was holding shipments because someone had screwed up the payment protocols, and the compliance team was having a meltdown because the quarterly reports were nowhere to be found. I rolled up my sleeves and got to work. Spent the next 4 months working until midnight most nights, reverse engineering every process, rebuilding client relationships one phone call at a time, and creating detailed operation manuals for everything. Color-coded, indexed, cross-referenced, the whole 9 yards. You want to know something funny? Catherine never bothered learning any of these systems. Why should she when I handled everything so smoothly? She'd just show up to meetings with her charts and graphs presenting the results of work she couldn't even explain if someone asked her a detailed question. "You're a natural problem solver, Calvin," she'd say during my annual reviews, always followed by some modest raise that never matched what I was actually contributing to the company's bottom line. Meanwhile, I was the guy everyone called when Patterson Industries had a crisis, when systems crashed at 2 a.m., when deadlines seemed impossible. The Patterson contract alone was worth $3.2 million annually. I'd built that relationship from scratch, staying late to accommodate their West Coast time zone, learning their business inside and out. I knew their seasonal patterns, their budget cycles, their key decision-makers' personal preferences. Catherine had attended maybe 5 meetings total with them, mostly to claim credit during executive presentations. My typical day started at 7 a.m., preparing detailed briefings for Catherine's 9 management meetings. She'd walk in there looking like she had her finger on the pulse of everything, when really she was just reading from notes I'd prepared. Every evening, I sent comprehensive project updates. In between, I put out fires before anyone even noticed there was smoke. The company basically ran on my systems, my relationships, my institutional knowledge. But according to Catherine, my methods were traditional. You know what traditional means in corporate speak? It means you actually know how to do the job instead of just talking about it in meetings. The morning after my rejection, I sat in my truck in the parking garage, staring at my reflection in the rearview mirror. The guy looking back wasn't angry exactly. He looked calculating, like he'd finally figured something out that should have been obvious years ago. I made 2 phone calls. First, I canceled my planned vacation to Colorado, a trip I'd been looking forward to for months. Second, I called my ex-wife to see if I could take Nicholas for a few extra days. "Everything okay?" Rebecca asked. She could always tell when something was up. "Yeah, just some changes at work." Want to spend more time with Nick? He'd love that. He was just asking yesterday why you're always working late. Out of the mouths of babes, right? My 14-year-old son had figured out what I was just now realizing. I'd been giving everything to a company that saw me as a useful tool, not a person worth promoting. What nobody at Phoenix Dynamics knew yet was that their smoothly running operation was about to hit a wall. See, when you're the guy holding up the entire structure, you get to decide when to step aside and watch what happens. The next morning, I made a decision that would change everything. Instead of arriving at my usual 7 o'clock a.m., I showed up at exactly 9 o'clock. Not 8:45, not 8:30. Exactly 9 o'clock a.m. No briefing notes, no early prep work, no getting ahead of problems before they became emergencies. For the first time in 7 years, I was going to do exactly what my job description said, nothing more. Let's see how traditional that felt to everyone. I settled at my desk at exactly 9 o'clock a.m. and did something I hadn't done in 7 years. I checked my personal emails first, then I organized my workspace. Slowly. By the time I opened my first work email, it was 9:15. The difference was immediate. Usually I'd have Catherine's morning briefing ready by 8:30, complete with overnight developments, priority issues, and recommended actions. Today, she'd be walking into her 9 o'clock management meeting with nothing. My phone started ringing at 9:05. "Calvin, where's the Patterson update?" It was Catherine's assistant, Monica, sounding frantic. "Good morning, Monica. What Patterson update? The one you always have ready by now?" "Catherine's presenting to the executive team in 10 minutes. I wasn't asked to prepare anything specific for today's meeting," I said, genuinely pleasant. "But I'd be happy to help if she wants to send me the agenda items she needs covered." Long pause. She just assumed you'd have it ready like always." I understand the confusion. Going forward, I'll need specific requests with reasonable lead time. I'm trying to be more efficient with my workflow. You should have heard the scrambling in the background when Monica relayed that message. By 10:30, 3 different people had stopped by my desk, all wearing the same confused expression. "Calvin, did you see the Walsh account scheduling conflict?" Anthony Reed from accounting asked, hovering nervously. "Yeah, I forwarded it to Michelle Turner in procurement about an hour ago," I replied, continuing to type. He waited for more. When nothing came, he shifted from foot to foot. "So, can you handle it like you usually do? Michelle says she needs technical specs that only you know." I looked up from my screen with a friendly smile. I'd be happy to help Michelle understand our documentation system. The technical specs are all in the client implementation folder, Walsh subfolder, section 3.2. It's clearly labeled, but you always just fix these things directly. I've been reflecting on Catherine's feedback about my methods being too traditional. I'm trying to demonstrate that I understand proper departmental boundaries and workflow protocols. Anthony's eyebrows shot up, but I was already back to my computer. The morning got interesting around 11 o'clock when our supplier management system started throwing error codes. Normally, I'd have that fixed in 20 minutes. Today, I submitted a standard IT ticket and continued with my assigned tasks. At exactly 12 o'clock, I did something revolutionary. I took a lunch break. An actual hour-long lunch break, off-site with my phone on silent. When I got back at 1 o'clock, the office felt different. There was this undercurrent of controlled panic, people moving faster, talking in hushed, urgent tones. Catherine appeared at my desk. At 2:30, her usually perfect composure showing cracks. "Calvin, we need to talk about this morning's management meeting." "Of course. How can I help?" "The Patterson status report. It wasn't what the executives were expecting." I nodded sympathetically. "What specifically were they looking for?" "If you give me the details, I can prepare something for next week's meeting." Her jaw tightened. "They were expecting the usual comprehensive analysis you always provide. I wasn't aware my analysis was part of today's agenda. In the future, if you need specific deliverables from me, just send a meeting request with the requirements. I'm trying to be more systematic about documentation and communication." You could practically see the wheels turning in her head as she realized what was happening. At exactly 5 o'clock p.m., I packed up my laptop and headed for the door. This was another first, leaving on time instead of staying until 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock. "Calvin," Catherine called out as I reached the elevator. "The Patterson Industries issue, it's escalating. They're saying our billing integration is down." That sounds urgent, I said, pressing the down button. You should probably get Yeet involved. I can take a look first thing tomorrow morning. Tomorrow morning? This is Patterson Industries. I understand they're important, but it's after business hours and I'm picking up my son. Have you tried the troubleshooting guide I created? It's in the shared drive under emergency protocols. The elevator arrived and I stepped in. Through the closing doors, I saw Catherine standing there with her mouth slightly open. 20 minutes later, I was at Nicholas's school, early for the first time in months. He came jogging out to the truck with his backpack bouncing, surprised to see me actually on time. Dad? Everything okay? You're never here before 6 o'clock. Everything's great, buddy. Thought we could grab some dinner and maybe hit the driving range. You've been wanting to work on your swing, right? His face lit up. Nicholas had been asking to go golfing for weeks, but I'd always been too swamped with work. Really? We can actually go tonight? Absolutely. How was your day? As we drove to his favorite burger place, Nicholas told me about his algebra test, his friend Jordan's birthday party this weekend, and how his science project on renewable energy was coming along. I realized I'd been missing these conversations, really listening to them instead of multitasking with work calls. At the driving range, watching Nicholas concentrate on his stance and grip, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years, being completely present in the moment. My work phone buzzed constantly in my pocket, but I left it there. Dad, you're different tonight, Nicholas said as we packed up the clubs. Different how? I don't know. More relaxed? Usually you're always checking your phone. That hit me harder than I expected. My own son had gotten used to competing with my job for my attention. I've been thinking about balance, I told him. Work's important, but it shouldn't be everything. Does this mean we can do stuff together more often? Yeah, Nick. It does. On the drive home, my phone showed 47 missed calls and 23 voicemails. The Patterson integration issue had apparently cascaded into a full system crisis. 3 other clients were reporting similar problems. The quarterly compliance report deadline was tomorrow, and nobody could locate the required documentation. I listened to about half the voicemails. Catherine sounded increasingly desperate. Anthony from accounting had called 6 times. Even Oliver Grant, the regional director, had left a message asking me to call him as soon as possible. I deleted the voicemails and powered down the phone. Everything okay, Dad? Nicholas asked, noticing me with the phone. Everything's perfect, I said. And for the first time in 7 years, I actually meant it. That night, I helped Nicholas with his science project instead of answering emails. We worked on his model wind turbine until nearly 10 o'clock, and I tucked him into bed like I used to when he was little. The next morning was going to be very interesting at Phoenix Dynamics. The next morning, I arrived at exactly 9 o'clock a.m. again. The office looked like a war zone. Colleagues rushed between meeting rooms with stacks of papers and laptops, looking frantic. Catherine was visible through her glass office, pacing back and forth on what appeared to be a very heated phone call. The regional director's assistant was stationed by the elevators, intercepting people as they got off. That's never a good sign. I settled at my desk and calmly organized my workspace. First things first, I checked the news, read a few industry articles, and responded to some personal emails. By 9:30, I was ready to tackle my actual job responsibilities. Where have you been? Anthony Reed appeared beside my desk, looking like he'd slept in his clothes. His hair was sticking up at odd angles, and he had that wild-eyed look people get during corporate meltdowns. I've been here since 9 o'clock, I replied calmly. Right on time according to my contract. But last night, everything fell apart. The Patterson integration crashed, 3 other clients are reporting system failures, and nobody can figure out how to generate the compliance reports that are due today. I nodded thoughtfully. That does sound challenging. Have you tried the troubleshooting protocols I documented? They're in the shared drive under emergency response procedures. Nobody can make sense of your documentation without you walking them through it, he practically shouted. Before I could respond, Catherine's assistant Monica appeared, looking close to tears. Calvin, emergency meeting in conference room A. Now, Oliver Grant wants to see you immediately. I glanced at my watch. I've got the quarterly budget review at 10 o'clock. Can we schedule something after lunch? Monica's eyes went wide. This isn't a request, Calvin. This is the regional director. He flew in from Dallas this morning. Ah, I said, standing up slowly and grabbing a notepad. In that case, I suppose I can reschedule the budget review. Walking to the conference room, I passed at least 6 people on phones with clients, all of them looking stressed. The coffee station was surrounded by empty cups and exhausted-looking managers. Someone had printed out what looked like hundreds of pages of system logs and scattered them across 3 different tables. Conference Room A was Phoenix Dynamics' biggest meeting space, usually reserved for client presentations and board meetings. Today, it looked like a crisis command center. Catherine sat at one end of the long table, her usually perfect appearance showing signs of strain. Dark circles under her eyes, hair slightly mussed, jacket wrinkled. At the head of the table was Oliver Grant, the regional director. I'd met him exactly twice in 7 years, once at my initial interview and once at a company holiday party. He was maybe 55, silver-haired, the kind of guy who radiated executive authority even when he was just sitting still. "Calvin," Oliver said, genuine relief flooding his voice. "Thank God. We need your help with this Patterson situation." I sat down and placed my notepad on the table. "Of course. How can I assist?" Catherine's face was tight with what looked like controlled fury. "Let's just cut to the chase here. What's it going to take for you to fix this mess?" "The promotion is yours," Oliver added quickly. "Senior manager, everything you applied for." I tilted my head slightly like I was considering this generous offer. "That's very kind, but I should mention something. I've been contacted by a competitor. Apex Solutions offered me a director-level position with a substantial salary increase. Apparently, they don't think my methods are too traditional." The silence in that room was deafening. You could have heard a pin drop. Oliver's eyes went wide while Catherine's narrowed to laser points. "You're leaving?" Oliver asked. "When?" "I haven't accepted their offer yet," I replied, maintaining my calm tone. "I've been taking time to consider my options carefully." "Name your price," Oliver said immediately. "Whatever Apex is offering, we'll match it. We'll beat it." I smiled politely. "It's not just about the money, Oliver. It's about respect, recognition, and having the authority to implement improvements instead of just maintaining other people's systems." "The Patterson client specifically requested you by name," Catherine interjected. "You can't possibly leave now when they need you most." "That's interesting," I said. "So did 6 other major clients in the past 3 months. Apparently, they've noticed that I'm the one actually handling their accounts, not just attending meetings about them." I reached into my laptop bag and pulled out a folder, placing it deliberately on the polished conference table. "Here's my 2 weeks' notice. I'll help with the transition as specified in my contract." Catherine lunged for the folder, but Oliver was faster. He opened it, scanned the contents quickly, then closed it with a decisive snap. "This won't be necessary," he said firmly, looking directly at me. "Calvin, I'd like to speak with you privately. Catherine, could you give us a few minutes?" Catherine looked like she wanted to argue, but you don't argue with the regional director when he uses that tone. She gathered her materials and left, shooting me a look that could have melted steel. Oliver waited until the door closed, then leaned back in his chair. "I've been watching your contributions from Dallas, though apparently not closely enough. This situation with Catherine concerns me. Why didn't you come to me directly about the promotion denial?" "Chain of command," I said simply. "Catherine is my supervisor. Going around her would have been inappropriate and unprofessional." He nodded slowly. "Admirable, but maybe misguided in this case. Tell me honestly, what would it take to keep you here?" I took a moment to consider my words. Recognition of my actual contributions, appropriate compensation for the value I bring, and a position where I can implement operational strategies instead of just executing other people's incomplete plans. Oliver studied me for a long moment. The guy had probably been in corporate management for 20 years. He knew talent when he saw it, and he knew when someone was serious about walking away. "I'm creating a new position," he said finally. "Director of Operations Strategy reporting directly to me. We're talking $140,000 base salary, full remote flexibility 2 days per week, and complete authority over departmental process design. The position is yours if you want it." I didn't answer immediately, which seemed to surprise him. "Is that not sufficient?" he asked. "It's very generous," I acknowledged, "but I need you to understand something. The competing offer is real. Apex Solutions has a genuine proposal on the table, and they're waiting for my decision." Oliver leaned forward. "What can they possibly offer that we can't match or exceed?" "A fresh start," I said honestly. "No history of being overlooked. No colleagues who see me as support staff rather than leadership material." He was quiet for a moment, processing that. Fair point. But consider this. You've built systems here that you understand better than anyone. You've cultivated client relationships that span years. Starting over means rebuilding all of that from scratch. He was absolutely right. 7 years of institutional knowledge, established relationships, proven systems. That wasn't something you could recreate overnight, but neither was the feeling of being consistently undervalued by people who depended on your expertise. "I'll need the weekend to consider your offer," I said finally. "Of course. But Calvin, I need an answer by Monday morning, and I'd really appreciate it if you could help us stabilize the Patterson situation before you make any final decisions." I nodded. "I'll handle Patterson personally this afternoon." When I returned to my desk, an email from Oliver was already waiting, outlining the new position offer in writing. The salary figure made me do a double take. It was nearly double what I was currently earning. The job description looked like it had been written specifically for my skill set and experience. I was gathering materials for the Patterson call when Catherine appeared beside my desk. Her expression was carefully neutral, but I could see the tension in her shoulders. "We need to talk," she said quietly. "Not here. My office at 2 o'clock. "I have the Patterson call at noon," I replied. "How about 3 o'clock? She nodded curtly and walked away. The Patterson call went better than I'd expected. Their team was frustrated, sure, but mostly relieved when I personally joined to address their concerns. Their service modification requests were reasonable. They needed customizations that would normally take weeks, implemented within days to meet their quarterly rollout schedule. I walked them through a phased implementation approach that would prioritize their most critical needs while building toward their complete requirements over the next month. This is exactly why we wanted to work with Phoenix Dynamics, their operations director Janet Walsh said during the call. "You understand our business needs, not just the technical specifications." After documenting the solution and sending clear implementation instructions to the technical team, I headed to Catherine's office. She looked different than I'd ever seen her. Smaller somehow, with dark circles under her eyes that suggested she'd been up most of the night dealing with the crisis. "Close the door," she said, gesturing to the chair across from her desk. I sat down and waited. Catherine wasn't the type to rush into difficult conversations. "I understand Oliver offered you a new position," she said finally. "He did." She nodded slowly, staring at her hands. "I won't pretend to be happy about it, but I understand why he did it. You're valuable to this company, more valuable than I gave you credit for." I stayed quiet, sensing she had more to say. "I owe you an apology," she continued, the words seeming to cost her something. "I've relied on your competence for years without appropriately acknowledging it or compensating you for it." "Can I ask you something?" I said, genuinely curious now. "When you said my methods were too traditional, what specifically did you think I was lacking?" Catherine shifted uncomfortably in her chair. "You've always been more operational. The guy behind the scenes making sure everything worked. Senior management requires different skills: visibility, strategic thinking, stakeholder management. In other words, I do the actual work while other people take credit for it in meetings." She had the grace to look embarrassed. "That's oversimplifying it. Is it, though?" I asked, leaning forward slightly. "The Patterson contract, who developed the service integration strategy that won us their business? You did. But it was based on market parameters I established. The client retention program that saved 4 major accounts last quarter, who received recognition at the leadership retreat. That was presented as a team effort, a team I coordinated, researched, and created all the materials for," I said. "Catherine, I'm not lacking qualifications. I've just allowed others to stand on my shoulders while I stayed invisible." The silence stretched between us for what felt like a full minute. "Are you taking Oliver's offer?" she finally asked. "I haven't decided yet. If you stay," she said carefully, "things will be different between us. I can promise you that." "Yes," I agreed. "They will be." That weekend, I had time to think clearly without the pressure of office politics and crisis management. Nicholas and I drove up to Sedona on Saturday, something I'd been promising to do for months but never found time for. We hiked Bell Rock in the morning and grabbed lunch at a local diner afterward. "Dad, you seem different lately," Nicholas said as we sat on the red rocks, looking out over the desert landscape. "Different how?" "I don't know. Like you're not always worried about something. Usually when we hang out, I can tell you're thinking about work stuff. That observation hit me harder than I expected. My own son had gotten used to competing with my job for my attention, and he'd learned to recognize when my mind was elsewhere. I've been thinking about priorities, I told him. Work's important, but it shouldn't take over everything else. Does this mean we can do more stuff like this? Yeah, buddy, it definitely does. On Sunday, I called my brother Wesley in Denver for advice. He'd gone through his own corporate politics nightmare a few years back before starting his own consulting business. "What's your gut telling you?" he asked after I explained the whole situation. "That I've outgrown the role they had me in," I replied. "But I'm not sure if Oliver's offer really changes the fundamental dynamics or just makes the box I'm in more comfortable. Would you be working for Catherine in this new role?" "No, directly for Oliver. And honestly, I think Catherine's position is being reconsidered." Wesley was quiet for a moment. "So your choices are basically taking a fresh start somewhere else or accepting a promotion that might result in your former boss facing some consequences for underestimating you." When he put it that way, it felt different. "I don't want revenge against Catherine," I said slowly. "I just want recognition for what I actually contribute." "Are you sure about that?" Wesley challenged me. "Because from everything you've told me, part of you would probably enjoy seeing her realize how much she's depended on you while simultaneously dismissing your value." His words made me uncomfortable because they hit close to home. Was revenge part of what I wanted? By Monday morning, I knew my answer. I arrived at 7:00 a.m., my old schedule, and went straight to Oliver's office before the day got crazy. "You're early," he said, looking up from his computer. "I wanted to give you my answer before things get hectic," I said, taking the chair across from his desk. "I'm accepting your offer, but with two conditions." His eyebrows went up. "I'm listening. First, I want full hiring authority for 3 additional positions. The operational improvements I have in mind will require the right team." Oliver nodded. "That's reasonable." "What's the second condition?" "Catherine stays in her current position." This clearly surprised him. "After everything that's happened?" "Why?" "Because replacing her doesn't solve the systemic communication problems between departments. And because I don't want my first leadership decision to be perceived as settling a personal score." He studied me with what looked like new respect. "That's unexpected, and politically very smart." "I've learned a few things watching office dynamics from the sidelines," I replied. "Very well. Catherine stays, though her department will now coordinate through your office for all operational matters." He stood up and extended his hand. "Welcome to senior management, Calvin. Thank you for staying with us." "No," I said, shaking his hand firmly. "Thank you for finally recognizing what was already here." 6 months later, the transformation was complete. My new team included a brilliant process analyst who'd been stuck in IT support and a strategic coordinator who'd been misclassified as administrative staff. Together, we'd streamlined operations across 5 departments, reducing overtime costs by 35% while boosting productivity metrics across the board. Catherine and I developed what you might call a professional détente. Not friendly, exactly, but respectful. She turned out to be excellent at client-facing work once she was freed from operational details she'd never really understood. The Patterson contract expanded to include 3 additional service lines, with their CEO specifically requesting my team's involvement in future implementations. Our employee satisfaction scores improved dramatically, and we'd implemented mentorship programs that were getting attention from other Phoenix Dynamics locations. On a Friday evening, exactly 6 months after my non-promotion, I left the office at 5:00 p.m. sharp. Nicholas was waiting when I got home, homework spread across the kitchen table as usual. "How was work, Dad?" he asked, looking up from his chemistry textbook. "Productive," I replied, loosening my tie. "We launched that employee development program I've been working on. 30 people are going to get advancement opportunities they wouldn't have had before, like the opportunities you didn't get." Exactly like that. He thought about this for a moment while working through a chemical equation. "That's a pretty cool way to fix things. Instead of just being angry about what happened to you, you made sure it wouldn't happen to other people." I smiled, recognizing the wisdom in his teenage perspective. Sometimes the best response to being undervalued isn't anger or revenge, it's demonstrating your worth so clearly that ignoring it becomes impossible. That evening, my phone buzzed with a text from Oliver. "Board approved your promotion to VP level effective next quarter. Unanimous vote. Even Catherine recommended you. I showed the message to Nicholas, who grinned and gave me a high five. VP, huh? Does that mean you're important now? I was always important, I told him. It just took everyone else a while to figure it out. Sometimes the most powerful response to being underestimated isn't proving others wrong. It's creating a world where talent can no longer be overlooked, no matter how quietly it does its work.